All right, I got another cool 20th century hardcore Catholic, you could say that, or no holds barred Catholic old school book here that you guys might appreciate. If you guys like this stuff, even if you're not Catholic, you might find it interesting just in the no nonsense way. This book is really covered and just kind of shows a little piece of history in the 20th century on how Christian books, I think in general, were just kind of talked about. But more so specifically, if you're Catholic, you'll find it interesting. Now, maybe you want to cover this one and just talk about it is in my book, or my coverage of the Dewey Rames Haydock Bible comparison to the Ignatius Press one. Some of you guys made a joke about how you, I don't know if you could have been kidding, but talking about just Bibles with pictures and that's your preference. And this isn't necessarily a Bible per se. It definitely covers the whole Bible with pictures, and there's some great images and illustrations in here, but also goes through church history for sure with a Catholic lens, no question. Like I said, if I didn't say it, this does not hold back. Some parts are definitely not politically correct, as was the case back for the time of these books. Now, this book in particular, you can still find it on Amazon and also eBay, and I can post some links down below if you guys want. But it's not too expensive. You can still find it. This was based on what I found, this was a well circulated book in its time. This book specifically was in my family for a while. This is actually my aunt's book. My father, who is in his 70s, my aunt, who is still alive, is older than him. So probably, she's in her late 70s, most likely 80s. And I took this from their farmhouse when I was a kid. And this should say something, because for some reason, I was always into kind of classical books and even theology, even as a kid. I would gravitate towards this book. I just thought it was really cool. And I held on to it. Later on, I did find out there's a note in the back that it is my aunt's book. My dad recognized it. And based upon looking to a little bit of research, but also just kind of at first glance, I could see, although it's not apparent right away, is that this is in some ways, or was designed primarily for catechesis for kids. And what's great about these books of the time, even things such as the Baltimore Catechism, although there's different levels of that, and what kind of gives it away too is there's different kind of questions and things like that in here. You'll find other notes that too. What's great about these types of books for kids is that an adult could for sure pick this up and get something out of it. And the way it's written, of course, you have visuals and pictures. It also makes the kid kind of want to grab it and start picking up and read it like I did as a young kid. But just the way they don't talk down to kids. It's very no nonsense. It's very straightforward. As with, I think, good catechesis in general. It's my own little opinion there. But what also kind of gives it away here, you can see a letter from Pope Leo XIII in here, talking about the thanks to the Benziger Brothers putting this book together. You have some other appropriations, and I'm kind of reading this through the screen, so it's kind of hard for me to see this. But you see it kind of going on here, giving some hints about they recommend this to the schools, the diocese. You have Chicago, Cincinnati. I saw Dubuque down here, Little Rock, so mostly Midwest stuff. Burlington, I'm assuming that's Burlington, Iowa, but I'm not sure. It could be another Burlington there. But even that's kind of funny too, just the way I cannot recommend it too much. So that's kind of funny. I'm going to go through some little parts of this book, and I'll share what I think is pretty neat about it. What I first will say it is cool is they do a great job, and of course there's many, many, many books throughout the years that have been published that summarize the Bible for not just a child, but even an adult could pick it up and read it. But it's, again, very, very much in a classical Catholic lens. There are some parts, even in these stories, that they allude specifically to Catholic doctrine and deviate a little bit outside of maybe what you might find like a Protestant interpretation of biblical stories to a certain extent. Also, just typology in general throughout this. But what's particularly interesting, and where they don't necessarily hold back, and I guess I'll kind of show the book a little bit too. So good visuals, paper throughout all these years has held up totally fine. I want to say the publication of this book, might as well jump ahead and look at that. So we got copyright, entered in the Library of Congress, 1869. It was an old book, went through a couple iterations. I'm guessing 1936 was this copyright of this edition. But book holds up fairly well. You can see also some little stuff there. This, I think, recently has come off. The binding is still there. Our binding's coming a little loose there. Got an index, but what I find particularly interesting and also fun, you can see there's a section on the Crusades, Mohammedanism. Like I said, they do not hold back. But what's interesting is you get into church history, and they break this down in a few different ways. So I'll highlight a couple things that I find amusing is not the right word, but maybe interesting might be fine, or just some stuff you're not going to see. Definitely in a modern book put out there, especially gravitating towards kids. So you have church history, goes through the birth of the church, goes to the beginnings, talks about the apostles, Roman persecutions, heresies. I think I just caught something here too. So again, this was I couldn't see it in the screen. Stuff like this would be a little more of a hot take to put that in there, especially let's say post-Vatican II. You got a list of various heresies. I gotta start looking through the screen so I can see what you guys are looking into. Other heresies included fall of the Roman Empire, Christian apologists, doctrines of the fathers of the church, conversions of the barbarians, and you start hearing terms like heathens, and here's the conversion of Ireland and Scotland, St. Boniface. So temporal power of the popes. Now it starts leading in again heavily into Catholic doctrine and dogma here. Goes to the history of the Crusades. A lot of stuff in favor of the Catholic Church, so discoveries and inventions of the Catholics. Goes through a whole list of stuff there. They get into more specifics, calling out things like heretics, heresies, all sorts of stuff from the French Revolution. Of course, they got to the Reformation earlier. Whole section here on Luther. Going on more into the Protestants, spread of religious revolts. Whole section on Calvin and Knox. I keep saying this, but it's just funny because you would not find this type of history inserted, I think, in most modern books that are geared towards kids. Now you got this fourth period of their history section that's focusing on the French Revolution and its influences here. And there's a section here on Freemasonry, and then even alluding to essentially leading into communism is based on what I'm kind of seeing on that, or socialism. And then towards the end, it's kind of going through various Catholic societies in America at this time, especially in this updated issue here. Talks about this Catholic Truth Society, discuss the only paper here, Catholic newspaper at the time, Catholic Tribune, Dubuque, Iowa, founded in 1922. That makes this a little interesting sentence here. The needs of the church for bringing the light of the faith to the heathen in foreign lands has been cared for by the society, the propagation of the faith, etc. there. And then you got another interesting part here that definitely cannot be included now. General conclusion section. So, yeah, I mean, this section here about the Jews probably is not the most politically correct thing at this time, but goes on to just battling heresies, discussions on Protestantism. So here it says, in the Protestant world, faith is rapidly passing away to be replaced by indifference or positive hostility to religion. These sects have lost their power, divided, torn among themselves, their only bond of unity being hostility to Catholicity. Not too far-fetched, I guess. We got a section, this part's interesting too. The teachings on civil freedom, now so prevalent, are inciting to a religious freedom that must end in disbelief. At no time in church's history have the bishops been so united with the sovereign pontiff or among themselves. Got review questions, feasts of the church, and information about that, vocabulary, index. So I don't know if you'll agree with everything in this book, but nevertheless, it is an interesting historical account and for sure a glimpse into the catechesis of the time, at least for children. Very interesting. It's actually one of those books, actually my kids do grab it. Now, whether or not they're going deep reading about church history and secret societies, I don't know about that. But nonetheless, I think kids do find it interesting for a reason because, like I said, it's not talking down to them. In the same way, an adult could read this as an easy summary of not just the church, not just the Bible, but also early church history, and whether you believe everything is totally accurate or right in line with Catholic dogma and teaching, that's up to you. Nonetheless, just thought I'd share this with you guys. If you're interested in these types of books, I got tons of them like this. Be happy to share them with you. Always interesting and kind of fun to read for a little glimpse into history.